They took everything from me that night. My crew. My brothers. My wife. You ever watch your whole world burn while the men you once called family laugh over the flames? I did. And I'll never forget it. We ran the South Docks for 5 years. Me, Rico, and Taz. We were small-time once, carjacks, quick hits, warehouse jobs. But when the big shipment came through last winter, the one worth $2 million in uncut diamonds, that's when greed started whispering in their ears. I should have seen it. Should have seen the way Rico stopped looking me in the eyes, how Taz always double-counted the cuts, always lingered on the numbers. But I didn't. I was too busy trying to build something real. A crew. A future. A home. My wife, Elena, she didn't want this life. She begged me to leave the streets, to take the money we'd stashed and run south. New names, new lives. I told her one more job. Just one more. That's the lie every thief tells right before his world collapses. It was raining that night. The kind that slicks the asphalt like glass. We were supposed to split the load after the drop, 3 ways, clean. But when I got to the warehouse, I found 2 bodies already on the floor, our drivers, blood pooling under the flickering lights. Then I heard the click behind me. Rico's voice. Cold. Flat. Sorry, brother. Business is business. Taz was beside him, gun in hand, eyes darting everywhere but mine. And then I saw her. Elena. Her wrists tied, gagged, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. She tried to scream when they dragged her into the truck. I lunged, but the butt of a pistol met my jaw. The floor rushed up like a wave. The last thing I saw was Rico lighting a match, tossing it onto the trail of gasoline snaking across the floor. The warehouse went up like hell's lantern. I crawled through smoke, coughing blood, skin blistering from the heat. When I staggered into the rain, the truck was already gone. They took the diamonds. They took my wife. They left me for dead. 3 months passed. The cops said nothing. No leads, no questions. You don't go to the police when you're one of the bad guys. So I waited. Healed. Listened. Watched. I heard whispers, Rico flashing new cars, new women. Taz running jobs with new muscle out on the east side. But no one mentioned Elena. No one. Sometimes I'd sit in the dark, fingering her wedding ring, the one they ripped off her finger that night and tossed in the dirt. I dug it out of the ashes myself. It's all I had left of her. You think time heals? It doesn't. It festers. It rots. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. Just planned. See, they thought they'd buried me with the ashes. But I've been digging graves of my own. And when I'm done, every one of them is gonna wish they finished the job that night. Because they took my wife. But they didn't take my revenge. Next, I'll tell you how I started hunting them, one by one. Rage wants to kick the door in. Revenge tells you to wait outside and study the hinges. So I waited. I started with the noise. Rico was loud, always had been. Flashy cars, open tabs, a laugh you could hear across a room. Men like that build their own map if you let them talk long enough. I kept to the shadows and let the map draw itself. 3 days after I could finally chew without tasting metal, I walked into Lolo's Billiards at noon, when the daylight makes drunks honest. Lolo had been moving information longer than I'd been stealing it. We weren't friends. We were a currency. You look like a funeral someone forgot to finish, he said, chalking a cue he'd never use. Need directions, I said. To where? 2 graves, I said. Maybe 3. He studied me. Price doubled on cryptic poetry. I slid a thick envelope across the green felt. He weighed it with his palm, then tucked it under the bar like we both weren't pretending what it was. Rico's been holding court at a club called Siren, new money spot. Likes the corner booth under the busted neon R, Taz. He's laying low in a motel on the east side. Brings muscle to the docks on Thursdays. That's all I can say without killing my retirement. Say it anyway, I said. Whispers say Rico's not spending those diamonds. He's trading them. Out-of-town buyers. Quiet meeting coming soon. And your wife? He stopped. My throat tightened. Finish. Lolo looked away. There's talk. Not proof. Someone saw a woman with him 2 weeks after the fire. Not like a hostage. Like leverage. He keeps her close when he needs to make men behave. Alive? I asked. My own voice sounded like it came from underwater. Alive, he said, too quick to be a lie. That's all I got. I walked out into the thin winter sun with a heart that finally beat for something besides hate. Patience is a blade you sharpen on your tongue. I chewed it every night after that, sitting in a rusted sedan that used to be my getaway car and was now my chapel. Siren glowed blue at the end of the block like a bad promise. Rico arrived in a white coupe he didn't earn, stepping out in a leather jacket that fit like a confession. Always 2 men with him, the kind who do squats at 3 a.m. and mistake volume for power. I learned their patterns. When they smoked. When they went quiet. How many drinks it took before Rico started tapping the table with his ring finger, that nervous tick he pretended was rhythm. The corner camera was dead. Convenient. The alley had one door with a bolt that never sat right. The back stairs creaked on the 3rd step. None of it was a plan. Not yet. It was a hymn, and I was memorizing the words. Taz was easier. Men who fear their own shadow walk the same streets under different names. He checked into the Motel Vista like a man leaving fingerprints on purpose. Fake name, real boots, same limp from a job we botched in 19. I watched him eat instant noodles with a fork and sleep with the TV on like it was a sentinel. He still wore the lucky chain he'd stolen from a parish priest, like God might forget and let him keep it. I didn't go in. Not yet. You don't squeeze a throat until you know what question you need choked out. On the 4th night, a car I didn't recognize rolled up to Siren. Black, quiet, windows tinted like secrets. 2 men got out. Clean shoes, clean hands. Buyers. Rico met them at the door, hugging like wolves in suits. I felt my pulse in my thumbs. Diamonds make desperate men brave, and brave men sloppy. I moved to the alley, counted steps, measured air. The back door opened and one of the suits came out to take a call, voice carrying in the cold. Drops in 3 nights, he said. Warehouse by the tracks. My blood went colder than the air. Not the warehouse. Another warehouse. A different fire waiting to happen. I pressed myself against the brick, ears greedy. No, the girl's just leverage, the man said, bored. He promised she stays untouched as long as everything goes smooth. A pause. If it doesn't, well, it won't be our problem. My nails bit my palm hard enough to leave crescents. Leverage. The word sat in my jaw like a stone. I could breathe again. He flicked his cigarette into a puddle and went back inside. I stood there listening to the sizzle until the moon put it out. 3 nights. The clock had hands now. I drove to the Vista, tires humming a war song. Taz's door was still, the TV murmuring some midnight preacher. I picked up a payphone down the block and dialed the front desk. Room 17, I said, voice roughened into someone else. This is your wake-up call. What? Taz's voice, sleep-drunk and mean. You should buy new friends, I said. Yours sold you cheap. He cursed, then slammed the door open and stalked into the lot, scanning the dark like it owed him an apology. He didn't see me. He never had good eyes for shadows. When he went back in, he double-bolted the door and dragged a chair across it. That told me everything about the loyalty of Rico's new kingdom. I gave him an hour to sink back into uneasy dreams. Then I knocked. Nothing at first. Then the chair scraped, the chain slid, the peephole darkened. Housekeeping, I said. He opened with the chain still on. The sliver of his face went from bored to haunted in a breath. No, he said. No, you're dead. Close, I said, and kicked the chain loose. He stumbled backward, hand diving for the nightstand. I let him see the handle of my own piece tucked under my coat and watched him think better of being a hero. We stared at each other over the motel carpet that still remembered other sins. Where is she? I asked. I don't know, he said fast. I swear on. Don't offer me saints. They don't listen to you. He swallowed. His eyes scampered over the exit like it might move closer if he begged it. Rico keeps her close, he said. Moves her when he gets jumpy. I haven't seen her in weeks. But you know when he will, I said. 3 nights. Warehouse by the tracks. He flinched like I'd slapped him. You been listening? I've been resurrecting. He shifted, the chain at his neck gleaming like a confession. Look, man. I never wanted. You lit the match, I said. He winced. Rico made me. Said you were soft. Said you'd take your cut and cry into it. I told him you don't cry. He didn't believe me. Is she hurt? Not like that, he said quickly, like the words could absolve him. He needs her alive. Keeps her in apartments under girls' names. Sometimes puts her in a back room at Siren when he wants her close. She tries to fight. She got spirit. He hates that. She always did, I said, and had to swallow the heat rising in my throat. You're gonna fix it. Fix what? You're gonna get me in the room with him, I said. You're gonna set the table. And then you're gonna pray. He laughed, short and cracked. You think I can walk Rico to a meeting with you in the walls? He'll hang me with my own lucky chain. You don't help me, I said. You won't live long enough to worry about rope. His shoulders sagged. He stared at the floral bedspread like it might argue for mercy. Rico trusts me enough to send me ahead to check the warehouse, he said slowly. If I say the dock cameras are glitching, he'll bring a smaller crew. 2, maybe 3. He won't expect you. He believes the dead stay buried, I said. That's his first mistake. Taz licked his lips. What's the second? He forgot who taught him to dig. I left him with instructions that were less a plan and more a promise. He'd go to Siren tomorrow, tell Rico the access road was clean, the rail cops paid off, the power on the east wall had a convenient hiccup. He'd insist on the back entrance. He'd mention the third step creak like he was smart for noticing. Men like Rico love to be told they're smart. At dawn I drove to our old house out by the river, the one Elena wanted to fill with basil and bad paintings. I sat in the driveway and let memories crawl into the car like cold air. I pictured her watering plants she hadn't bought yet. I pictured her humming in the kitchen, smacking my hand away from the sauce. I'm close, I said to the ghost of a woman who refused to be a ghost. I'm coming. On my way back to the city, I passed a patrol car parked at the bend, the cop inside pretending to nap. He lifted 2 fingers in a lazy salute. I kept driving. We had an understanding, the kind built from old favors and unopened envelopes. He wasn't here for me. Not yet. By afternoon, I had eyes on Siren again. The neon are buzzed like a mosquito overdue for winter. Taz went in at 2, hands empty, sweat darkening his collar. He came out at 3 looking like a man who had just sold a piece of his spine. Rico followed later with his new suits, laughing, slapping backs, making promises to men who count on promises breaking. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I let it ring. It buzzed again, then a text flashed, warehouse key. Back of meter box. East wall. Taz, doing as told. Or baiting a trap. Either way, it led to the same room. I parked by the tracks after midnight when fog dredged the ground. The warehouse loomed like a sermon no one wanted to hear. I found the meter box on the east wall, pried it open, and fished out a key taped under a corroded flange. It was warm. Freshly planted. I slid it into my pocket and listened to the building breathe. Inside was dust and regret. I walked the perimeter, counting exits, measuring echoes. Third step on the catwalk creaked like a confession. Good. I want him to hear something right before he doesn't hear anything ever again. My phone buzzed again. This time a picture. My breath stopped halfway up my throat. Elena. Eyes swollen, jaw set, alive. Today's paper on the table in front of her. Proof of life. Under it, one line, come alone. I smiled, a small, ugly thing that didn't reach my eyes. Alone. Sure. If only they knew what I keep with me when I'm by myself. Alone is a word people use when they want you to feel small. I'm never small. I'm a house full of locked doors and every key is on me. I spent the morning building a night. Bolt cutters. A pocket pry. 2 rolls of gaffer tape. A coil of fishing line. A flathead screwdriver shaved thin like a razor. The old .38 for talking, the hawkbill for punctuation. I slid a brick of road flares into a duffel next to a cheap fire extinguisher. Smoke makes brave men honest. At noon I went to the tracks and counted. Freight grown through every 22 minutes, give or take a late conductor and coffee. The horn rattled the warehouse ribs for 8 seconds on the bend. 8 seconds is a door if you're fast. I can be faster. I called the cop with the lazy salute, the kind who likes money better than paperwork. Union reps doing a surprise safety sweep on the East Spur, I said, voice tilted the way foremen talk. Tonight, he grunted. Between 1 and 3. Tell your boys to nap somewhere else. Don't want citations sticking to uniforms. A beat. Appreciated. That bought me quiet. Quiet buys you choices. Taz sent another text mid-afternoon. 1:40. 3 bodies. Truck 210. The numbers looked like a prayer someone else wrote for me. I stared at them until the rage stopped trying to pick fights with the plan. Before sundown, I visited Lolo. He was slicing limes like he wanted to hurt Citrus. You sell anything with my name on it? I asked. If I did, you wouldn't be asking me, he said, eyes on the blade. You'd be a mural. Then keep it like that, I said. There'll be noise tonight. When feet come asking questions, you never heard of a warehouse, you're allergic to diamonds, and you think Elena is a bartender at Siren who moved to Phoenix. Lolo smirked. You planning to burn half the alphabet? Just the letters I don't need anymore. Night took the city apart and handed pieces back with different names. I dressed in black that drank light and drove without the radio. I parked 2 blocks south of the rails and walked the last stretch with my hands empty and my head crowded. Fog sat along the ballast like a sleeping animal. The warehouse stood up out of it, ribs of corrugated iron, a row of dusty windows like dead fish eyes. I could taste rust on the air. I opened the meter box I'd already opened and killed the power with a quiet click. Darkness rearranged everything. Then I unspooled fishing line ankle-high across the alley door and dusted the catwalk with a scatter of flour from a brown paper bag. The third step still complained. Good. Let it testify. The key scraped in the east door like a whisper and I slid inside, hugging the left wall. The place smelled like old oil and spilled promises. Moonlight found its way through cracks, making thin white knives on the floor. I went slow, counting the beats of my own lungs. Voices ghosted in from the loading bay. 2 men, low, joking. Not Rico. His voice always strutted. I eased onto the catwalk, crouched beneath the railing, and watched shadows move where the trucks would kiss the dock. Taz came in first, lighter flame painting his face for a second before he closed his hand. He looked pale. Good. Fear puts a man's truth closer to the surface. Another shape to his right, tall, squared shoulders, the easy stance of someone who'd been paid to be bored. Muscle. I waited for the laugh that didn't belong to either of them. It showed up late and arrogant. Rico stepped into view like the building owed him applause. He wore that same leather jacket, the one I'd bought him back when loyalty was a language and we were fluent. Check the corners, he said, and the bored man obeyed. The guard took the alley first. 10 steps. Fishing line snapped. He swore, catching himself before he face-planted. Rat, he muttered. A lot of those out here, Rico said, smiling. He wasn't nervous. He was performing nervous for the boys. Taz kept his hands jammed in his pockets like he was keeping his heart from falling out. He glanced up at the catwalk and didn't see me. That was the test. He passed without knowing he was taking one. Truck's late, the muscle said. They always are, Rico said. Make men hungry, they pay faster. He gestured and Taz moved to the east wall, prying a panel loose to reveal a duffel. He didn't look at me because he didn't know where to look. He tossed the bag on a pallet. It thumped with the weight of something that turns hard men into soft ones. Let's see the pretty, Rico said, zipping it open. Moonlight found facets and scattered itself. Diamonds throw their own constellations. For a heartbeat I saw Elena under that light, smiling at stars that could buy us another name. I bit my lip and tasted iron. 2 more sets of footsteps approached from outside. Buyers. The bored one went to meet them. Doors squealed. Voices changed shape to fit money. I stayed still until stillness started to itch. Alone. the text had said. I was alone. But I wasn't uninterested in company. I slid along the catwalk to the stairs and took them slow, leaving flower marks that weren't mine untouched. The third step complained. I paused long enough to let them think it was a rat or the building remembering how to be a tree. Down on the floor, Taz rubbed his hands together, an animal trying to stay warm. The buyers were suits again, different faces, same shoes. One held a briefcase like a holy book. They did the ritual. Bag opens, case opens, each man counts the other man's lies. The numbers matched long enough to keep guns holstered. "Where is she?" I said softly, and the room didn't answer. I waited until Rico turned his back to laugh at something clever that wasn't. Then I dropped the duffel I'd brought, road flares and the cheap extinguisher wrapped in tape, right behind a stack of pallets and yanked the cord on the extinguisher. White fog roared out, a blizzard in a box. Men cursed, bodies moved wrong, instincts sputtered. I grabbed a flare, smacked the cap, and let angry red pour into the cloud. Smoke and light married into chaos. "Police!" I shouted in a voice that had put 3 men on their stomachs in 18. Old reflexes took over. The board guard ducked behind a crate. One suit went prone like a trained dog. The other fired blind and screamed at his own echo. Rico spun, eyes wide, hand going where men keep final arguments. I moved through the red and white like a ghost with a grudge. The hawkbill kissed the back of the bored one's calf, and he went down gasping. The .38 found the suit's wrist and said, "Drop it," with the authority of a small thunderclap. Metal clattered. Taz was frozen, half bent, hands up. His eyes found mine inside the wild carnival of light and powder. Recognition went through him like electricity. "Up," I said, towing the diamond bag back with my boot. Against the wall. Rico stepped into the flare glow, gun finally out, and time slowed enough for me to catalog the little things. Sweat at his hairline, that ring finger tapping against the grip, his mouth set like he was biting back a prayer. "You," he said, like the word tasted like grave dirt. "How?" "Bad men are hard to bury," I said. He smiled, mean and soft. "You should have stayed dead. You should have finished learning." We stood there breathing at each other while smoke wrote lies in the air. Footsteps thudded on the alley. The fishing line had warned me once. It wouldn't again. More bodies coming, or the same bodies making a different mistake. "Where is she?" I asked. Rico tilted his head toward the office cube built on the mezzanine, a box with dusty windows that used to watch invoices get stamped. Behind the glass, a shadow shifted. Small. Familiar. My heart sprinted at the bars of my ribs. "Bring her down," I said. Rico's smile deepened. "Come get her." I took a step left, away from the flare, away from where he wanted my eyes. He mirrored, quarter-turning, trying to keep both me and the diamonds in his sight line. Taz flinched, and I knew something before anyone said it. This stage had more actors than I'd invited. The horn on the bend blared, 8 seconds of iron throat. It shook the walls. It shook the men. It shook something loose I'd been holding onto since the fire. I moved on the horn. 2 shots went off at the same time, one from the mezzanine, one from Rico. The glass exploded into glittering rain. The flare threw the world into staccato frames. A shape toppled behind the office railing. Rico's bullet punched past my shoulder and tore a scream out of the sheet metal. I hit the floor and rolled, the .38 barking twice. Once at a kneecap I'd mapped days ago, once at a light fixture that needed to die. The bulb burst and darkness took a bigger bite. Men shouted names that were mostly lies. Powder stung my throat. I slid behind a forklift and tasted copper. Above, a voice I knew better than mine cut through the mess. "Run!" Elena shouted. Then the office door banged open, and a figure stepped into the frame with a shotgun I hadn't planned for, silhouette big and wrong, and said, almost tender, "Nobody's running." The silhouette at the top of the stairs held the shotgun like a bedtime story. He stood where the mezzanine met the office door, feet planted, patient as church stone. My flare hissed down to a red nub and died. Darkness folded in, thick and useful. "Bishop," Rico called, relieved. "Keep the lady where she is." So that's who he was, the rumor you hear before you taste it. Bishop, the East Side's quiet butcher. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His answer was the soft ch chunk of the pump. "Lay your piece down," he said, voice low and pleased, "or I'll start a collection." I breathed through the burn in my throat. If he shot from there, pellets would turn the floor into a mouthful of teeth. If I moved wrong, Elena would be the line of fire. The train's echo still shivered the building. Its tail-end rumble masked the scrape of my boot against concrete as I shifted weight. "Lower the gun," I said, and stood up slow from behind the forklift, hands out, .38 dangling by the trigger guard on my middle finger. The hawkbill lived quiet in my other sleeve, sleeping. "Take me." "Let her go." Rico laughed like a car alarm someone lost the remote to. "Hear that? He thinks this is a romance." Bishop tracked me without hurry. "You step into the open," he said, "and I'll think about not shooting your girl first." "Think loud," I said. He took 2 steps onto the catwalk. The third one complained with a long, honest creak. Flour kissed his boots white. I smiled in the dark where he couldn't see it. Men who don't believe in omens are usually too proud to check their footing. "Bishop," I said conversationally, buying seconds, "you ever wonder why they made that step loud?" "Because it's old," he said. "Because it's warning you," I said, and tossed the .38 high, lazy, a little arc of promise. Every gun in the room chased it with eyes. Bishop's muzzle flicked up in reflex, a good habit in a bad moment. In that breath, I yanked the fishing line I'd run from the handrail to the support beam earlier, the one looped at ankle height across the top landing. The line sang. Bishop's boot met nothing and he dropped, one leg shooting out, back smacking the rail hard enough to grunt the truth out of him. The shotgun barked at the ceiling, spraying pellets into tin and shadow. Sparks fell like angry snow. I was already moving. I dove for the office stairs, felt hot air where Rico's next shot shaved past, heard Taz scream a word that sounded like, "Wait," and meant nothing helpful. I took the first 2 steps, jumped the third, landed low and rolled as Bishop tried to rise into another pump. The hawkbill woke and wrote a neat short line across the back of his thumb. The shotgun clanged away and fell to the floor below, kissing concrete with a noise that made everyone flinch again. He came at me empty-handed and full of confidence. Men like Bishop think fighting is math. Big beats small. He swung. I ducked. The second swing was better. It caught my shoulder and sent a burst of white across my eyes. I buried the hawkbill in his thigh, not deep, but persuasive, and he sat down hard, swearing like he'd just met creativity for the first time. The office door was 3 strides away. I took them. It was locked. Locks are suggestions. The flathead found the latch and convinced it, and I shouldered through into the stale dark. "Elena," I said, and the name came out like a wound. She was there, cuffed to a steel desk, hair tied back with something makeshift, eyes wild and absolutely alive. Her mouth trembled, then set like it remembered me. "You're late," she said, and I almost laughed and cried and bled at the same time. "Traffic," I said, moving to her. My fingers shook once, then listened. The cuffs were cheap. The pry kissed them open. I slipped my jacket over her. "Can you run?" "I can fly." Shots cracked below. Men yelled positions no one would keep. The office glass whined, spiderwebbed and shedding flakes. I pulled her close to the interior wall and we crouched while a round smacked into the file cabinet and turned a folder into confetti. "We go down the back," I said, pointing at the short stair like a throat. "Stay low." "Third step." "Creaks," she finished, and something in me unclenched. She had been watching. They hadn't taken that. We moved. Bishop tried to snag my ankle with a mean hand. I ground my heel into the cut I'd gifted him, and he turned that hand into a fist and that fist into a mistake. He rolled away, groaning, buying himself a future he didn't deserve. On the floor, the world was noise and shapes. One suit had crawled behind a pallet stack and was crying money. The other was gone, the briefcase a dead weight on the ground, lid open, half the bricks of cash tumbled and stepped on like paper truths. Taz hugged the east wall, hands up, eyes ping-ponging between me and Rico as if choosing a god. Rico stood centered like a bad idea, gun steady now, smile gone. "You brought the hurricane," he said. "You lit the match," I said. Elena stepped behind me, and Rico's eyes snagged on her. Possession, pride, promise, whatever you want to call the things small men feel when they think they're big. It flared ugly in his face. "Come here, Lena," he said, "sugar over broken glass. He'll get you killed trying to prove a point." "Your point was fire," she said. "I prefer proofs with less smoke." He laughed once. "Mouth still gets you hurt." "Not as much as yours is about to," I said, and with my left hand I flicked the last flare to my right, past Rico, toward the stack of pallets soaked earlier with a polite amount of dieselide siphoned from the parked forklift. The cap bit, red fury licked up, then orange, then hungry yellow. Heat pressed hands against our backs. Shadows climbed the walls like panicked thieves. Rico swore and pivoted, not at us, at the diamonds. That was always going to be the choice waiting for him, blood or glitter. He reached for the bag, and I reached for him. The .38 coughed once more and found his ring finger. The gun clattered and his hand became a lesson. He screamed, clutching the mess, and I closed distance. Elbows, ribs, the simple mechanics of ending pride, every move we practiced together now mine alone. He went down under a rain of old debts. I tasted smoke and old hate. "Where are the safes?" I said into his ear, because information is oxygen. He spat blood. "What?" "For your heart," I said, and drove my knee into it. "The safe houses. Where you move her. Where you sleep when you're scared." He laughed wet. "I don't get scared." Elena knelt, fast and unafraid, grabbed his broken hand and twisted just enough to make honesty whisper. "Gallery," he gasped. "Back of Siren. The room behind the mirror. Codes change Tuesdays. Today's 1-7-1-3. Stash 2 streets over, Marta's. Basement freezer that don't freeze. Keys on Taz." We all looked at Taz. He lifted his hands higher, as if that made him lighter. Words failed him, and I almost felt sorry for the syllables. Sprinklers chose that moment to remember their job. Water exploded from the ceiling like a belated apology. Steam hit flame and the room became a white scream. In the fog, Bishop groaned himself into motion. The suit found his voice and started bargaining with a god that sells wholesale. Somewhere outside, the truck engine we were promised growled a question at the loading dock. "Time's up," Elena said, and tugged my sleeve toward the east door. I leaned close to Rico's ear. "You took my wife," I said. "I'm taking the rest." "Come back," he hissed. "Finish it." "Oh, I will," I said. "That's the part you should worry about." We moved, low and quick, past a Taz who had to choose or drown. He chose and shoved a key ring into Elena's hand without looking at me. "Third from the—" he started. "I know," she said, and we went. We slipped through the east door into an alley that had been practicing being a throat. Cold air slapped us and cleaned the smoke from our lungs with knives. I heard Rico screaming orders to ghosts. I heard Bishop dragging a leg like a promise. The truck brakes sighed at the bay. New men, new guns, late to a party that didn't love them back. We ran south along the wall, keeping to the seam of shadow that lives between city and mistake. My rusted sedan crouched where I'd left it, a dark idea waiting. We dove in. The engine coughed twice, then remembered who we were. As we pulled away, Elena let out a breath that fell apart into a laugh. It was small and wild and the most expensive sound I'd ever heard. "You kept the car," she said. "It kept me," I said. Her hand found my knee. The weight of it was home with a heartbeat. In the rear view, the warehouse breathed steam and blue light and the kind of chaos men write reports about. We turned 2 corners, 3, and the night separated into neighborhoods that didn't care who we were. "Where?" she asked. "Not home," I said. "Not yet. They'll have eyes on addresses we've loved." She nodded, understanding written all over her face like a map we drew together years ago. She flipped the key ring Taz had handed over, found a small brass one worn smooth by fear. "Siren first." "Back room," I said. "Behind the mirror. Codes numbers that mean something to a liar." "And Marta's," she said. "The freezer that doesn't freeze." He hid what he couldn't carry. "What we can use to bury him," I said. She looked out the window at the city sliding by. "Rico won't stop." "He doesn't know how," I said. "I'm going to teach him." We drove in a quiet that wasn't silence, Just the space between beats when a heart decides to keep going. At the light by the river, she turned her face to me, close enough that I could count the ashes in her eyelashes. "Tell me what you did when I was gone," she said. I gripped the wheel and smiled without teeth. "I learned the hinges," I said. "Now we take doors off." Behind us, sirens woke up late, hungry and excited. In front of us, the RN siren would be buzzing like a bad halo. In between, there was a debt ledger with names and a line at the bottom that was getting ready to say paid. We weren't safe. Not yet. But she was beside me, alive and looking forward. And that meant they hadn't taken everything. Not my wife. Not my hands. Not the patience I needed to end this right. They took Elena. They can have the regret. I'm keeping the revenge. Siren looked smaller with Elena beside me, like a bully shrinking when someone finally stands up. The busted neon are buzzed and spit light across rain-dark pavement. I parked 2 streets over and we cut through an alley that knew our names. Her hand around the keys felt like time catching up in our favor. We didn't walk through the front. Elena led like someone who learned the floor plan by counting the footsteps of every night she survived here. Past the dumpster with a bruised lid, through a service door with a hinge that sighed like a cigarette. The bass from the main room thumped through the walls, some song about forever that wouldn't make it till Tuesday. We dropped into the hallway where the velvet on the walls pretended to be wealth. "Left is the office," she whispered. "Right is the hallway to the private rooms. One-way glass." She glanced at me. "You always hated mirrors." "I hate liars," I said. A bouncer slouched on a stool by the end of the hall, the kind of mountain that prides itself on blocking paths. He looked up. His eyes slid over Elena like inventory, then stuck on me. Recognition flared, then died. Either he didn't believe in ghosts or he didn't get paid enough to chase them. "Staff only," he grunted. Elena stepped in, a half-pace, chin up, and for a second I saw the version of her they thought they owned and the version of her they could never understand. "Marta needs me," she said, flat and bored, like she'd said it 100 times. He wavered. "Names are passwords if you've earned them." He flicked his chin toward the right. "Make it quick." We slipped into the hallway. Red bulbs hummed low over black doors. Somewhere behind one of them, laughter hit glass and slid down. Elena stopped at a door with a frame that had been painted one time too many. She leaned in and found the seam of the mirror with her thumb. "Back of the mirror," she said. "Code pad lives in the trim." She lifted the decorative strip. Beneath, an old keypad blinked a tired green. "Numbers?" I asked. "His birthday," she said. "The one he told women. 1-7-1-3. Her fingers moved, and the mirror hiccuped. A soft click. She pushed. The glass wasn't glass. It was a door with a promise. It swung in to reveal the kind of room where men hide things they can't explain to their accountants. Safe. Cabinet. A couch nobody would nap on voluntarily. The air smelled like cheap perfume and expensive fear. Elena went straight to the safe, didn't ask. "He made me watch him change the codes," she said. "He thought it taught me something about dependence." "What did it teach you?" "How long it takes to pick a lock with my eyes." She keyed it, then listened, literally listened, to the machine think. The latch gave. Inside was a spill of faces and futures, bricks, passports, a small velvet pouch tied like a gift. A phone. A thin stack of photos rubber-banded tight. A thumb drive in a pill bottle. I took the photos first. You can tell a lot about a man by who he photographs without smiling. Bishop at a barbecue, hand on a boy's head like a blessing. The lazy cop from the Bend, out of uniform, shaking hands with Rico by a boat that didn't pay taxes. A councilman I recognized from billboards, eyes soft around a woman who wasn't his wife. Insurance policies. Elena watched my face. "He kept them," she said. "Men like him don't keep friends. They keep leverage." The phone lit at my touch. No passcode. Arrogance is a better locksmith than I'll ever be. Messages stacked like dominoes. Bishop, 140 confirmed. Cop, rails clear. Marta, freezer restocked. My thumb hovered on her name. "Leave that," Elena said. "She's not stupid. She's just exhausted. You trust her." I trust what she's scared of, she said. Which is everyone. I pocketed the thumb drive, passports, and the small velvet pouch out of reflex. Inside that pouch, not diamonds, teeth. 2 gold. 1 canine filed into a point. Rico liked trophies. I put them back like they were hot. Take the ledgers, Elena said. Not the cash. You allergic now? I'm tired of paying with time we don't have. The door thumped. Not a knock. A warning. The mountain from the hall had decided to have thoughts. Everything okay in there? He called. If you open it, you clean it, Elena said, pitching her voice the way the club's women talk when they're done taking orders. It held. The stool creaked again as he sat back down. We left the room the way we found it. I thumbed the phone to record the corridor. On reflex, I turned the mirror into a window. Through it, a private room, the kind with a couch, a table, an ashtray full of lipstick. Rico had built stages everywhere. Back in the hall, Elena squeezed my hand once. Marta next, she said. Marta lived in a brick row house that had been painted the color of a bruise. Plants crowded the window, stubborn and thriving. She answered the knock with a chain on, eyes set to suspicious. When she saw Elena, suspicion lost a step. Baby, she breathed, then pulled the chain without looking at me. You're either a miracle or a storm. Both, Elena said. Marta was late 40s, ageless in the way of women who've negotiated rent with charm and rage. She waved us in and closed the door fast, like the hallway collected secrets. Her place smelled like cumin and coffee and a fight with no winner. I told you to run when you could, she scolded and hugged Elena anyway. Then she looked at me, measuring the damage and the cause. You're the husband. I'm the hinge, I said. She snorted. Then open this. Why did you bring the war to my floor? Because you already live under it, Elena said gently. He used your basement, Marta. Marta's lips thinned. He paid for it. With other people's air, I said. Silence swelled, then popped. She shook her head and pointed at the kitchen. Freezer doesn't freeze, she said. But it keeps quiet. We followed her. The fridge was old and white and humming bravely. The freezer compartment leash-wobbled on tired hinges. Inside, under a sacrificial bag of peas, sat a shoebox wrapped in duct tape and a flannel shirt like a blanket. Marta lifted it out and set it on the table like a baby she didn't want to have. I don't know what's in it, she said. I don't open other people's sins. I peeled tape. Inside, bundles of smaller sins, drugs, yes, but also documents. Photocopies with signatures. A ledger in Rico's blocky hand. A small black notebook with names and dollar amounts and dates, all the way back to the winter we thought we were brothers. A flash drive twins with the one from Siren. And at the bottom, a cheap spiral notebook with Elena's name written on it like a claim. She picked it up. Her breath hitched. She flipped the cover and read. It's not his, she said softly. It's mine. Her handwriting. Pages of days. Things she noticed when they made her be still. License plates. Songs in the hallway. Names overheard. A calendar of shipments she'd watched through a keyhole of bad luck. You wrote it all down, I whispered, throat thick. I didn't know who would come, she said. I wanted to leave breadcrumbs in case anyone ever did. Marta leaned against the sink, arms crossed. You done? Because that box owes me electricity. Last thing, I said, and held up the notebook with names. Do you know who any of these belong to? She scanned. Stopped. That one, she said, tapping. Lazy cop. He drinks at Lolo's when he's pretending to be someone else. That's when we heard the shoe scuff outside the door. Not a neighbor. Not a delivery. A pause, like someone deciding whether to turn a knob or knock with a barrel. Marta's eyes met mine. She mouthed, back. We moved. She pointed to a door off the kitchen, a little porch choked with pots. It led to a narrow iron stair that descends into a shared yard. I used to love iron stairs. They talk. They squeal. They tell on you. Elena slipped through first, then Marta. I took one step and froze. Voices on the other side of the kitchen door. 2 men. The soft murmur of professionals who think they're early to the crime scene. The front door knocked, polite. Then the knock turned into a fist. "Ms. Alvarez." The voice came muffled, friendly, official. "Just a welfare check." Marta's mouth was a thin line. "He doesn't know my last name," she whispered. The knock again. "It's the police." Elena's fingers tightened on the railing. The iron answered in a long, betrayed whine. We couldn't run down. Not without singing our exit. I slid back inside the kitchen and set the shoebox on a chair. Marta grabbed a cast-iron pan like a truth, no apology in her grip. "Do not fight them," she whispered. "You fight him, but not them." "I don't fight cops," I said. "I fight men who rented a badge." The front door frame shuddered. The chain snapped. Boots. The hallway smelled like rain and arrogance. 2 uniforms, 1 plain clothes, him. The lazy salute from the Bend now wore cologne and a smile that didn't get invited to weddings. He stepped into Marta's living room like he owned the deed. "Evening," he said, eyes sweeping. They landed on the 3 coffee cups in the sink. They lingered on the puddle by the back door. They returned to me without surprise. "Heard you fell into a fire and decided to crawl out." "Elbow healed crooked," I said. He took off his cap and set it on the table like we were about to pray. Bishop stepped in behind him, jeans damp, thigh wrapped, face gray with pain and fury. He shut the door gently with 2 fingers like a gentleman and leaned against it like a trap. "Don't," Marta said to Bishop. She didn't raise her voice. He looked at her. His jaw worked. He stayed leaning. The cop smiled like he'd heard a good joke from yesterday. "My name's not important," he said. "What's important is how this goes. You give me what you took from Siren and the train house, and I forget I saw you. I even escort you to your car, so the cameras write a nicer story." "Elena isn't a thing I took," I said. "She's a witness," he said. Which is another word for problem. Bishop let out a little laugh that was mostly a cough. "You should have stayed under the ash, brother." Elena took 1 step forward. "Say my name again and choke on it." The cop eyed her, cool and calculating. "You got spunk," he said. "Spunk gets women dead." Marta moved the cast iron half an inch. "So does stupidity." He glanced at the shoebox. He didn't look at the freezer. Either he already knew or he already owned every secret in it. He tapped the table with 2 fingers, that lazy rhythm he'd honed by not doing his job. "Clock's ticking," he said. "Rico's men are circling. The street's going to bloom with blue real soon, and I'd rather write 1 paragraph than 3. I slid the ledger onto the table. "Trade," I said. "Names for safe passage." He leafed it without reading. "This ledger's a prayer book without a priest. I'm the priest." "Then hear confession," I said. "Page 12. He looked. His face didn't move. "You think having dirt on a councilman scares me? He's cheap. He'll pay. He always pays." "The thumb drives," I said. "You want them more." He smiled without humor. "I have copies of half those already. You really don't understand your position." I understood more than he wanted me to. He wasn't here for the drives. He was here for us, to deliver or to bury, depending on which way the wind paid him. He wanted me to think I was negotiating. He wanted to decide later. The back door whispered again, a neighbor's television, a dog's sigh, the city shifting its weight. Elena's hand brushed my arm. In that touch, "We go now or never." "Escort us," I said. "No sirens. No surprises. You get the drives after we're out." Bishop grinned, teeth pink at the gums. "You're not writing terms in Marta's kitchen." The cop picked up his cap. "I am," he said. "Terms, you walk out in front of me, hands where I can see them. The lady between. The box stays. I will decide what belongs to who." Marta planted the pan. "You will decide nothing in my house." He didn't look at her. That was his mistake. Elena closed her notebook. "1 question," she said to the cop. "Why the act by the Bend? Why the 2-finger salute if you were going to sell him anyway?" He shrugged, easy. Men like him like to think they're still seen. Then see this, she said, and flipped her phone, screen bright. A video started to play, Rico in the club office, laughing with the cop, taking an envelope, the cop pocketing a chain of keys. Bishop in the corner, counting. Marta's fridge visible in the background. Where? He started. Mirror, I said. They watch to feel large. They forget mirrors look back. For the first time, the smile slipped. A small thing, an exposed tooth, but it slid. He inhaled and everything in the room tightened. Air, muscle, choices. Outside, a siren hooped and cut, close. Tires hissed in wet. Boots splashed. The hallway filled with more blue. The cop tucked the cap under his arm and nodded, small and sharp. Change of plan, he said, voice turning into orders. Everyone outside. We're going to settle this where the neighbors can clap. Bishop opened the door. Cold Evening walked in and sat down. Elena looked at me. Marta's eyes were a dare. We stepped toward the door. The night beyond was crowded with silhouettes, cruiser lights washing the brick in slow, indifferent red and blue. The cop leaned close as we passed and whispered like a favor. Smile, pretty. If you run, you'll be a headline. If you stay, you'll be a rumor. I can live with either. We crossed the threshold, the city waiting to judge. My hand brushed Elena's. Her fingers answered. The lazy cop lifted a hand and the circle tightened. That's when a fourth car turned into the block, lights off, engine low, and rolled up to the curb to nose against a hydrant like it belonged there. The driver leaned out the window and said, perfectly calm, to the cop with his hand up. Your boss is on Channel 3. He says to stand down. The cop didn't look back. My boss isn't. The radio on his shoulder hissed, then barked his name with a tone that didn't permit imagination. His jaw checked itself. His eyes found me and wrote me new. On your knees, Bishop murmured behind me. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She looked down at the screen, then up at me, and her face did something I'll remember when the city forgets us. It went still and bright at once. Rico, she said. He sent a video. She hit play. My face lit red in its glow. On the screen, Lolo sat at his bar, hands bound with the same polite tape I used on extinguishers, a bruise rising like a storm over one eye. Rico's voice purred from off-camera. Thought you'd like a bonus round, he said. You took something from me. I took something that knows where you breathe. Bring me the drives and the notebook. Come alone. Or I start closing tabs. The video ended with Lolo's tired eyes finding the lens like a prayer. The block was very quiet for a street full of cops. The video ended with Lolo's tired eyes finding the lens like a prayer. The block was very quiet for a street full of cops. The cop with the lazy smile considered the universe and drew a new line. Change of plan, he said again, softer. He pointed at me. You. With me. No. Bishop's hand settled on my shoulder like a sacrament. The fourth car idled, radiator ticking. I looked at Elena. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just reached up and touched my jaw like we didn't have an audience. You're not alone, she said. I know, I said. And then the radio on the lazy cop's shoulder screamed something that sent every uniform into motion, and the circle broke, and the night chose its chapter for us. The radio on his shoulder didn't talk, it screamed. Officer down, East Viaduct, units break and respond. Every head turned like a flock catching wind. Blue washed brighter. Boots moved. Hands cut the air. The lazy cop's jaw tightened one notch, the one he reserves for moments where appearances lose to math. Change of plan, he said a third time, but now he was talking to himself. He looked at Bishop. Hold them. Bishop's fingers anchored on my shoulder like a small, intimate hate. Elena's hand was still on my jaw, a counterweight to every stupid thing I've ever done. The fourth car idled, the driver invisible behind smoked glass. Then Marta dropped her pan. You'd think a pan wouldn't matter in a street full of sirens and guns. You'd be wrong. Cast iron on concrete is a cannon, and somewhere in every cop's spine is a spring that jumps at the wrong loud. The circle flinched. Bishop's hand chose instinct over duty and reached for his thigh, where my hawkbill once wrote a lesson. I turned under his grip, slid, and used the turn to peel his fingers away. Elena was already moving, a shadow slipping between blue legs toward the mouth of the alley. Marta stood in her doorway, cursing at no one in particular in a volume that makes men back up out of pure self-preservation. "Stop!" the lazy cop barked, raising his hand like he could heard lightning. The fourth car's door opened. The driver stepped out, and for a second the block forgot how to breathe. He wasn't a uniform. He wore a windbreaker with letters that don't play well with small-town politics. Not IA. Not local. Federal. The kind whose badge makes other badges remember their warranties. "Officer," he said mildly to the lazy cop, "your radio's bleeding. Your scene is compromised. Stand down." "Jurisdiction," the cop began. "Is a ghost," the Fed said. "And you're chasing it." His eyes flicked to me, curious, like a man who finds an extra card in a deck he counted twice. "You're coming with me," he added, like we'd agreed earlier. Elena's phone buzzed. She held it toward me, another video. Lolo again, now with a split lip, still sitting patient like a man who ran out of good choices years ago. Rico's voice purred, closer. "Clock. Brother. Drives for blood. Doc 9. 30 minutes. Bishop took a step, decided against it, and stayed leaning. The lazy cop watched power change hands and hated the taste. He tried on a smile that didn't fit. "Fine," he said to the Fed. "Take him. I'll keep the lady warm." "Try," Marta said, and raised the pan like a benediction. The Fed touched my elbow. Light, a suggestion. "You want him alive?" he asked Elena without looking away from the street. "Then you don't follow. You get somewhere with walls and people." "She's not a stray," I said. "Neither are we," he said. "Move." I got in his car because sometimes you choose the leash that bites slower. The door thumped shut like a gavel. Through the glass, I watched Elena's face close around an answer I didn't deserve. She slid her notebook into Marta's hands without ceremony. Marta tucked it under her shirt like a promise and vanished into the staircase that sings. The Fed drove without sirens, like a man who trusts the street to get out of his way. For 2 blocks, we were quiet except for the city telling us secrets in clicks and hums. "You have the drives," he said, conversational as coffee. "Not a question." "They have gravity," I said. "Everyone keeps falling toward them." He cracked a window. Rain wrote Morse on the glass. "You were at the warehouse," he said. "You were late to it," I said. "We were watching a different one burn," he said. "Funny thing about fires, they don't RSVP." "What do you want?" I asked. "Ends," he said. "The kind that stick." He pulled into a lot 1 block shy of the river. From here you could see the cranes and the low orange lamps that make docks look like a necklace on a cheap dress. Doc 9 leaned into the wind like a tired shoulder. "You're coming?" I asked. "I'm letting you get out where cameras think I left you at a deli," he said, and smiled like a man who only smiles to stretch his face. He handed me a cheap flip phone. "If I call, you answer. If you don't, things fall. Your choice." I took it. "Why me?" "You're a fuse," he said. "And you're already lit." I slid out into the rain and jogged the last block with my collar up and my heart beating instructions. The river smelled like metal and old deals. Doc 9 was quiet the way a snake is quiet. Rico staged it like theater. Single work light pooling yellow on a crate. Lolo on a chair in the circle of it, tape new over tape old. 2 of Rico's boys angled on either side like commas. Rico in the center, hands empty, smile present. Behind them, shadows deeper than usual. The lazy cop. Bishop. Or just the kind of night that multiplies enemies. "You brought my stories," Rico said. He meant the drives. He meant every receipt. I held up the thumb drive in a gloved hand, tiny, ridiculous. "You brought my bartender. Your bartender sold me your days for a stack and a favor," he said. "You should choose your friends the way you pick your locks." "I'm choosy," I said. "Lolo just doesn't have the back for this century." Lolo looked at me and rolled one eye toward a piling. "Twice. Tells our prayers if you know the liturgy." I followed it with my peripheral and saw the shape tucked behind wood, Small, shiny, wrong. A camera. 2, maybe 3. Rico didn't just want the drives. He wanted a movie. Put it down, he said, chin flicking at the crate. Then step back and kneel like a man who remembers church. I walked forward slow, counting boards. Doc Planks tell you everything if you listen. 2 soft, 1 split, 1 new. I set the drive where he told me, then put my hands up halfway. Let him go, I said. He doesn't know anything you can spend. He knows I can open you, Rico said. And you know, I'd like to. I blinked rain. You light another match tonight, I said, and everything you built catches the same wind. He laughed, delighted. You always liked metaphors. Me, I like demonstrations. He nodded. The boy on the left moved forward with a knife and a grin. He cut Lolo's tape at the ankle, then yanked him up hard enough to steal a year. Lolo stumbled, found his feet, and raised his chin like a man about to play the only card left. Rico, he said. You don't have to. Rico hit him. Not hard. Performative. For the camera. For the cop. For whoever buys absolution at these little theater nights. Where's the notebook? Rico asked. In Marta's freezer, I said, because sometimes the truth is bait. And because you don't trust me, check with your friend by the bend. From the shadow, the lazy cop stepped enough into light for his smirk to register. Freezer that doesn't freeze, he said, amused I'd been paying attention. Cute. You want it? I asked Rico. Trade the old man and let the lady walk away from the block she paid for with time. You get your bedtime stories. We get breath. Lena doesn't walk, he said quietly, and the way he said her name was a bruise. She comes back when I say. Or she goes under with you. Something in my chest tried to claw out. I fed it a nail and kept my face still. The Fed's flip phone was a stone in my pocket. Elena's phone in hers was a lit match in my head. I took a step to the side like an accident. Bishop appeared out of the dark like an error correcting itself, shotgun low now, eyes mean. His thigh was bandaged with something that didn't come from a hospital. I owe you, he said to me. I collect by staying upright. Collect later, Rico snapped, never spinning his eyes far from mine. Focus. Lolo coughed. You look smaller, Rico, he said. Rico hit him again. Performed again. Then he looked at me, all the laughing gone. On your knees, he said. Or I start with his fingers. I went to my knees. Sometimes pride is a tool. It cuts you before it cuts them. My hands were still up. The flip phone vibrated once, gentle. I didn't look down. You think I won't do it? Rico asked. I think your cameras will, I said, and smiled a little. He blinked. The lazy cop frowned. Bishop's eyes narrowed with the kind of curiosity that keeps men alive. Mirror looks both ways, I said, softer. Some of us learned. Some of us set alarms. He barked a laugh and flicked his chin at the boy with the knife. The boy grabbed Lolo's hand and stretched it over the crate like a lesson. The flip phone buzzed again. This time I glanced. One line, simple, 30 seconds. I licked rain off my lip and looked back at Rico like a man memorizing a face he plans to forget. You broke the crew, I said. You took my wife. You lit the warehouse. You think this ends with me crying into a camera? Brother, you don't know what I kept when I lost everything. What's that? He said. The fuse, I said, and almost felt the smile I haven't worn since before the fire. And the wind. The light over the crate stuttered. Just once. The docks went black for a heartbeat, then came back thin and sick. The lazy cop's radio coughed static, then a voice that wasn't the city's, flat, female, practiced, began to read names. Councilman. Bishop. The cop. Dates. Times. Locations. Clips. The mirror had been talking to someone else now. Elena hadn't run. She'd climbed. Rico's head snapped. What did you? Shared folder, I said. Public. Scheduled. Everywhere. Your cameras can point wherever they want. Everyone's already watching a different show. The boy with the knife froze with Lolo's wrist in his fingers. The lazy cop lunged for his radio like he could choke it quiet. Bishop pivoted, 80% toward me, 20% toward survival. "Grab it," Rico yelled, pointing at the drive. And while his eyes chased that piece of plastic, I reached under the crate where I'd taped the flare earlier, palmed it, cracked it, and slammed it into the gap between boards. Angry red blazed up. Heat turned the rain into steam. The boy cursed and jerked back. Lolo yanked free like a fish that remembered water. I was already up, Hawkbill awake, cutting the rope at Lolo's wrists as the world decided to pick a side. Bishop brought the shotgun up, and the lazy cop brought his pistol out, and the Fed, God bless his late entrance, stepped from behind a forklift with his own cast-iron voice. "Police! Drop it!" he shouted, badge high, stance clean. Everything stuttered, went frame by frame. Bishop swung toward the new light. The lazy cop half-turned, calculating sale prices. Rico went for the diamonds that weren't even here. And I took Lolo by the collar and shoved him sideways into river air as the shotgun boomed and the pistol barked and the flare hissed like a snake in a story. The first pellets chewed wood where my face had been. The pistol round took a chunk out of a piling and ricocheted into the dark with a whine. The Fed's voice got harder. Feet scrambled. Someone screamed a name that wasn't theirs. "Run," I told Lolo, and shoved him toward the ladder that dropped to the skiff tied loose below. He went without arguing, because men who live behind bars know when a door opens. I pivoted back into the light because Elena wasn't here and the only thing I could give her from this dock was a future. Rico and I locked eyes again. The world around us was coming apart like rotten rope. He raised his gun. I raised my empty hand and showed him his ring finger scar with my smile. "Third step creaks," I said. "What?" he started. Behind him, Bishop took the third step without meaning to. The wood screamed. The shotgun jumped. The muzzle flash painted us in white for a strobe-length eternity. The blast took the lazy cop's hat off and shaved his pride. He fired back, instinct and fear steering. Bishop staggered, shot again, this time into the light, killing it. The dock went to shadow and steam. I moved in darkness like it owed me back pay. Rico fired blind, where my voice had been, and I answered from where his ego lives. The hawkbill bit the tendons in his wrist, and his gun dropped with a sound I'll hear when I'm quiet in rooms I don't deserve. He swung, wild, clipped my ear, and the world flashed molten. I drove my shoulder into his ribs, and we went down on wet wood like brothers used to wrestle over a television remote. He tried to bite. I let him. Teeth are attacks. Pain makes your hands honest. "Where is she?" I said into his bad breath. "Say it." "Home," he spat, blood and rain mixing. "Siren. Where she belongs." "She belongs nowhere you own," I said, and pressed his head into the plank until he chose night. The Fed yelled something I couldn't hear over the river's grin. The lazy cop was on a knee now, gun down but not out, radio still pouring out our sins to the neighborhood. Bishop backed toward the shadows, leaving a smear that would teach someone's intern how to write reports. I grabbed the drive from the crate with one hand and Rico's jacket collar with the other, dragged him 3 feet, then remembered mercy is my most expensive habit and let him keep his life long enough to see the bill. A skiff engine coughed below. Lolo's hands on a pull cord, face pale. "In," he yelled. I looked once toward the mouth of the pier, at the shape of a woman in my head, at the idea of a city deciding whether to live with us. Then I jumped, hit the boat low, rolled, and came up with rope already in my hands. "You bring him," Lolo gasped, meaning the drives, meaning the end of something. "I brought the wind," I said, and shoved us off the dock while bullets argued with water and the Fed argued with God. We slid into the river's black. Behind us, Dock 9 shrank to a story the city would get wrong. Ahead, the channel bent left, and beyond that, the street where sirens are buzzed like a guilty conscience. "Where?" Lolo asked, voice shaking into steadiness. "Back to the bruise-colored house," I said. "Then to the club. Then to the end." "You think you got time?" he asked. I touched the flip phone. It was warm with new messages, the Fed's insistence, the city's gossip. I touched the place behind my ribs where Elena had said I wasn't alone. "Time's a door," I said. "And I brought hinges." The river took us in, and the rain got lighter like it wanted to see the last part clearer. On the bank, Somewhere under cheap neon and expensive lies, a mirror was about to finally tell the whole truth. Marta's stoop was dark when we slid the skiff under the footbridge. Lolo tied us off with hands that remembered 100 knots. The bruise-colored house glowed a low kitchen light. I climbed the fence, landed soft, and knocked our code, 2 fast, 1 slow. The chain scraped. Marta's eye glinted, and then she was pulling us in with the gravity of one small, furious planet. "Elena?" I asked. "In my room," she said. "Making your enemies famous." Elena stood by the table with a laptop that didn't belong to the zip code, cables trailing like veins to 2 burner phones. The mirror had been generous. Half the city was already eating. She looked up and her face unclenched when she counted the pieces of me that still moved. "You're leaking," she said, touching my ear with that quick tenderness only wives and surgeons have. "Rico's worse," I said. "And the doc's a rumor." "The Fed called," she said, nodding at the flip on the table. "He wants the drives. Says if we give them now, he can keep it clean." "Clean," Marta snorted, pouring coffee that could strip paint. "Like water in a gutter." The flip buzzed. I opened it. The Fed didn't waste syllables. "You lit a city councilman on fire," he said. "Phones ringing from the marina to the pastor's breakfast. I can hold the line for an hour, maybe less. Bring what you have to Sirens back alley. Now." "Who's waiting?" I asked. "Me," he said, and something like a warning softened behind the word. "And others. Don't make me say please." He hung up. Elena closed the laptop and slid the notebook under her jacket. "We finish it there," she said. Lolo wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You got a death wish?" "I have a list," I said. "And it's shorter than it was yesterday." We moved. Marta handed me her cast iron like a relic. "For luck," she said. "Luck's for men without hinges," I said, but I took it anyway. The alley behind Siren smelled like wet smoke and spilled champagne. The neon are buzzed, stuttering like a lie. The Fed sedan crouched by the service door, engine ticking. He stepped out with his badge in one hand and a tired smile that said he'd argued with people who didn't read past the headline. "You brought friends," he said, clocking Elena, nodding to Marta in the shadows. He looked at Lolo and didn't pretend not to see the tape burns. "You brought witnesses." "Fine." He took the drives from my palm and slipped them into an evidence bag like he was tucking in a child. "Inside," he said. "We make the arrest clean. Cameras everywhere. No one gets to rewrite it." As if the door heard him, it opened. The lazy cop filled the frame, suit jacket on, tie loose, smile gone. "You aren't invited," he told the Fed. "Your invitation got revoked on Channel 3, the Fed said. "You going to arrest me for doing your job?" The cop's eyes slid to me. "You put on a show," he said. "You think it changes endings? It changes tomorrow's paper. That's all." "Paper's good kindling," I said. "We're burning old wood." Behind him, the hallway pulsed with bass and bodies, the club still pretending it was exempt from weather. Then the bass cut, sudden, like a throat clearing. The mirror room's feed had leapt to the big screen in the main floor. I could hear the crowd sound bend from drunk to holy. People love a revelation when it's about someone richer than them. Elena stepped forward. "Move," she told the cop. He bared teeth. "You don't give orders to men with pensions." Marta lifted the pan. "I do," she said, and he believed her. They backed up. We went in. Siren's hall felt narrow, the velvet damp with heat and guilt. The mirror door was cracked, the room beyond bright as confession. Rico wasn't there. Bishop wasn't there. But their echoes were. The safe sat open like a wound. The cabinet stood ajar. The couch looked like it regretted its career. The Fed raised his voice. "Detective," he called to uniforms he knew were listening. "By the book. No souvenir pictures. No speeches." The lazy cop reached for the ledgers like a raccoon going for foil. The Fed's hand closed over his wrist. "You're done," he said. "Quiet. Final." For a second, the cop considered trying to be a movie. Then Bishop limped out of the side office, shotgun gone, eyes ragged, smile stitched together out of pain and habit. "Family reunion," he rasped. "Where's the cake?" The kitchen, Marta said, and swung. The cast iron caught his forearm. Bones spoke. Bishop hissed and grabbed for her. Elena stepped in low and fast and put her knee in a place that makes every kind of man reconsider prayer. Bishop folded and found the carpet. The Fed kicked the shotgun alternative out of his reach, a knife that had never once cut bread. Applause came from the club floor, drunk and mean and thrilled. On the big screen, the mirror Fed rolled through clips that made powerful men suddenly remember their middle names. The councilman's face, pale in a private booth. The cop counting. Bishop laughing in the wrong room. Rico toasting to a fire. The Fed looked at me. "You want to put cuffs on somebody?" he asked, offering them. "I want the person who took her to hold metal," I said. "That'll be him," Elena said from the doorway, chin tilted toward the hall. Taz stood there, hands up, eyes wide like a kid at his first arrest. He looked at Elena, then at me, and I saw the tremor in his jaw, the one that says a man's last lie is trying to get out. "I brought him," Taz blurted. "I told him you were dead. I lit the gas. I kept the keys. I can talk. I can give you everything. You can give her the code to every lock you ever looked at," I said. He nodded too fast. "I can. I will. Just don't feed me to." "You fed me," Elena said. "To rooms. To nights. To men who say please after they say don't move." He closed his eyes, once. When he opened them, something resigned had taken the place of the twitch. "I'll testify," he whispered. "Against all of them. Against me." The Fed cuffed him, read him words that sound different when they're actually true. The lazy cop tried to slide backward toward a side exit. Two uniforms decided their careers outweighed their friendships and blocked him. Outside, sirens braided tighter. News vans learned our street name. The city leaned in. Rico arrived too late to stop any of it. He came through the front like a man who believes in his own myth, hair wet, jacket crooked, hand in his pocket like it held a promise. He took 3 steps into his kingdom and saw his face on his own wall. The sound the crowd made was not a boo. It was older. It was the sound villages make when the wolf trips. His hand came out with a gun. 6 phones came out with cameras. 3 officers came out with training. The Fed's voice cut it clean. "Drop it." Rico looked right at me over 100 shoulders. The old smile almost found his mouth. "Brother," he said, and in that word was every night on the docks. "You did all this for a woman and a ledger." "For a door," I said. "And a way out." Elena stepped up beside me. We were framed in the mirror on the wall. Me, the woman they hadn't taken, and the city taking a breath. Rico's eyes flicked to her. Pride flared, then cracked. He lifted the gun a fraction, question or threat, and the Fed answered with a shot that ended both. Rico went down in a confusion of leather and ego, hand opening at last. The club exhaled. The lazy cop sagged into a chair that didn't want him. Bishop put his forehead on the floor like penance. Taz stared at the ceiling like it might offer him a sky. They took pictures. They took statements. They took men away in cars that smelled like resigned vinyl. The Fed tucked our drives into a loop of chain of custody that would strangle half a docket. He handed me a card that said his name and the word agent, nothing else flashy. "You don't get anything you want out of this," he said frankly. "Just less of what you don't." "I want Tuesday to come," Elena said. He looked at her for a second like she was something he didn't categorize often. "It will," he said. "And it will be worse first. They will smear. They will say you set it up. They will say you liked the rooms." She nodded. "Let them. The mirror remembers." We walked out into air that had been waiting to be clean. The R over the door flickered, then went dark. Dawn was arguing with the horizon in pale blues. Marta squeezed my shoulder once like a stamp. "You bring my pan back," she said. "It brings itself back to you," I said. Lolo lit a cigarette with hands that had finally stopped shaking. "You two gonna disappear?" he asked, smoke writing loose cursive. "Not yet," Elena said. "Someone has to testify. Someone has to testify and plant basil." We went to the river as morning found its first window. The city looked smaller from the bank, like a bad story cut down to its last paragraph. I leaned on the railing and listened to water make promises no one believes until they do. I thought revenge would taste like sugar, Elena said. It tastes like ash and aspirin. It tastes like not waking up in a room you didn't choose, I said. I can live with that. She slid her hand into mine. Warm. Present. Earned. The Fed texted once. A simple update. Bishop booked. Detective suspended pending charges. Councilman resigned. Lolo sent me a photo of his bar with the lights on and no men sitting in the dark. We drove to the house by the river we weren't ready to enter. We sat in the driveway and watched the day pull itself on. Elena touched the dash like it was a dog we hadn't named yet. They took me, she said. They almost took us. But they didn't take the hinge. No, I said. They didn't. I turned the key and killed the engine. The silence that followed didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like a room we'd opened by learning every hinge and choosing when to push. They took my wife. The gang took everything they knew how to hold. But they didn't take my patience. They didn't take my hands. And they sure as hell didn't take my revenge.